Hello, fellow viewers and collectors of small models. So I thought I'd do a video of this project, my student design project, back when I was studying to become a product designer. Partially because I had some photographs of the Pikes Peak hill climb I went to, and all those photographs are gone. They were overwritten, and it would be a shame, I think, to have this overwritten by my foolish nature and inability to keep things organized. Okay, so this is going to be a long video. I'll leave a little mention there in the notes if you want to skip it forward to the final model. And then at the end, you can skip forward even to the collection of models I put into this model. Sorry, it's a lot of word models here. Okay, so when I was a design student, I had all these 187 scale cars, HO model railroading stuff. And I always liked making models as a kid and dioramas and stuff like that. And these models were so nice that I needed to have a proper place to display them. And I thought, well, why don't I just make a miniature diorama of a car museum and then I can show off my models in that. So I used this idea as one of my school projects. This project was done in around, I think, 2006. 2006. So I forgot a lot of stuff. I did modify this presentation and added some larger photos so you guys can actually see the model cars and stuff better. So I dubbed this thing the Los Angeles Automotive Museum. It's just a concept, never became reality, obviously. If it did, I would have been in the news, right? So it's just a personal project that I used for school. All right, so the design brief was to research and design and build a scale model of a car museum. Uh, it would be fictionally a privately funded collection, but still allow people from the public to come and view it. The intention was to have it built into the Hollywood Hills. I was living in Los Angeles at the time. So there's some research, and then the design, and then the final model, and then at the end I'll show the newer models I put in here. All right, so I'm not going to read all this stuff, all this research stuff, but it just gives you an idea of what designers do when they're working on projects. So this is the criteria I set up. I want to hold at least 100 of these scale models. I have to think about the different departments of a car museum and operations and stuff. Then I look for inspiration, non-architectural, anything, tents, ocean waves, whatever, fractals, but actual real museums. This middle photo here is the Guggenheim Museum, and I've been there, and this is a large inspiration for what I came up with here. I basically took the Guggenheim and jammed it into a mountain. I guess you could consider it that way. But there's a lot of great architects and stuff making very interesting buildings. Yeah, so maybe you recognize some of these buildings, but maybe not. I think that's the Volkswagen headquarters. All right. Plenty of buildings. Norman Foster, a great architect. Another one is Renzo Piano. Santiago Calatrava. And then I also thought about, landships, they're called. Buildings built into earth, are very efficient for energy because the earth is such a good insulator. So I was thinking about having vegetation on the roof, that kind of stuff. Lower energy consumption. Garden research, passive solar heating. This is a part of a landship thing, most likely. Well, actually, that's not a landship there, but all right, some mechanical mobility, things that would help people maybe move around in there or move vehicles around. Well, this stuff didn't end up in my final design, by the way. Naturally, I want to be inspired by cars. I would have loved to have been a car designer, but I'm not remotely talented enough to do that. But I still like car models, as in case you haven't noticed my channel. So, watching racing, watching World Rally, watching Le Mans, all that stuff. I thought of maybe having a wind tunnel in there. All right. So, anyways, I picked a location, and these are some general ideas. North of the Getty Museum on the 405, or in Orange County, which is a very wealthy county in the LA region. San Pedro Long Beach, it has a mountain, but probably not the right place financially. But Hollywood, everyone knows Hollywood, right? So Hollywood actually has some mountains, and yeah, I picked this as my fictional location, basically north of the Hollywood Reservoir. So, okay, I actually went out to the location myself, took this photograph. Google Maps was actually something back then. YouTube was not, I don't think, or it was just starting. All right. So this is the view from that location. So this is the Hollywood Reservoir, and this is a different part of the mountain, I guess. The Hollywood sign is on this mountain range. Okay. I laser cut out a three-dimensional relief plan. I basically looked at topographic maps and then I traced over them and laser cut all this stuff out. I made a second one that was a little more detailed here. Okay, thought about zoning and stuff like that. And then luckily in Hollywood is the Peterson Museum, and Dick Messer was the director at the time. And after I'd shown him a bunch of research, he was kind enough to take time out of his day and talk to me about, you know, things, museums have to consider. And then he was also nice enough to show me the basement, the vault, where there's, a bunch of nice, cool cars. And I have a video of those photographs. Those photographs were not deleted, thankfully. So check my history on that. So here's some, facilities and departments one had to consider. And then sketching began. I didn't really sketch much. I knew this was going to be too time consuming to come up with a bunch of ideas. I needed to make the model. I knew how long it would take. All right, so this is just some side plan views. And then I made a mock-up. This is a foam board mock-up. These three little cars, or four little F1 cars, are 1/87 scale. So HO model railroading. So this foam mock-up itself was quite large. The size of like a kitchen table. But, through this mock-up here, I got a general idea of what I was going to go for. So I did a couple computer, mock-ups as well. This is a program called Alias. It's surface modeling. I'm not sure nowadays, but back then car designers used this to sculpt the bodies of cars. But as you can see, I got some ideas here to, build this thing. All right, I'm not sure where the other photo went. All right. And then I can use these outputs from the CAD program to give a little tour inside. Here's a little ideation 3 with, I'm not sure where ideation 1 went, but a different exit. Anyways, you'll see in the final model what all this stuff is going to be. Giant escalator here is going to be incorporated. And then building this thing, I had to use Adobe Illustrator that later was converted to CorelDRAW, and then I had to laser cut this all out myself out of wood and acrylic. Sadly, I don't have any actual pictures of me building this thing. So here's the final model. If I recall, this model was around 5 feet long, maybe 2 feet wide, and 2 feet tall. Those are 1/87 scale cars. This is a 9-volt battery. A couple sketches in the back, whatever. All right, I cleaned up the thing a little bit. If I had actually paid, if I had actually made an acrylic case, I would have donated this to the Peterson Museum. But as it is in a wooden case, they wouldn't, Mr. Messer did not want this thing, and I totally understand. Ultimately, this ended up at Burbank House of Hobbies, where I bought most of these model cars. I'm not sure what they did with it. Hopefully they sold it or gave it to some enthusiast. I don't know. All right, so this is just some overviews. I'm going to give you an actual tour of this model here. All right, so let's see. Here's a little short tour, but I added a whole bunch of extra slides with a longer tour. So here's a top view of it. There's a parking lot, obviously, at the base of the mountain. And then the majority of the thing you wouldn't see because it's built into the mountain itself. You would, after parking, you would hop on this extremely long outdoor an escalator. And, park benches and the mountainside itself. The escalator is supported by cable stays, very much, like some of those architectural inspirations. And I bought a bunch of people working outside on the grounds. This is a view of you going up the escalator. All these little HO scale figures. So it's like a 4 or 5 story tall escalator, very long. This is all acrylic, And then this is also acrylic. I laser cut and then used a heat gun, and I melted, the plastic, and then I filled it in with like auto body filler, and then I painted it. The mountain face itself is just a giant piece of acrylic that I used a heat gun again and just created all these ridges and stuff like that. And then I glued on a whole bunch of hobby grass, and some of these I got a mold for some hobby rocks, and I, glued those on there. The trees I purchased, they're just HO model railroading trees. All right, so here's a different view, some grounds people working underneath the escalator. Intention would be like there'd be a waterfall, artificial waterfall here, and then you'd be going up an escalator over a waterfall. All right, so this is the top building, the part that you would see from the road or from the sky. And a lot of the inspiration, comes from things used to design cars. Sweeps, they're called. These plastic sweeps that we would use to draw, the contours of vehicles. So a lot of that is built into the design. Also, wire spoke wheels from yesteryear. So that's what these supports are supposed to be, kind of mimic the wire spokes of a wheel, but they're meant to hold the roof in place. So this is all laser cut acrylic, this roof, just a couple different layers of it. And then I glued in some hobby gravel and stuff like that. I could remove the roof. I tried to form acrylic this way. I could not do it, so I actually paid an acrylic shop to form this nautilus shape for me. But everything else I made. Like I took real wood and I put in the laser machine, and I rastered wood paneling, and then I clear coated it with polyurethane to make it like a parquet floor. Hobby grass and all that stuff. So you'll see here there's an anchor, and that's holding a large part of this suspension bridge here, the suspension escalator. Here's a different view. So you'll notice some of the cars, they had in 187. Sadly, I've sold up almost all of them. I only have like maybe 20 cars left in my possession. All right, so after you would get off this giant 4 or 5 story tall escalator, this is your first person view. You could start seeing some American cars in the top building, since this is located fictionally in Hollywood. Got Camaro there. Corvette. I can't remember the brands of these cars, but they're quite nice. You could either choose to walk around the outside on the grass and look into some cars. That anchor point here, some more details there. Once you get around to the front of that top building, you would see the Hollywood Reservoir. So that's that photo I took from before, and I photoshopped it here. That's the view you would have, and then this is all LA. Right, Hollywood is actually down here. The Peterson Museum is somewhere down there. All right, this is a sculpture of all these automotive sweeps used to draw cars, and those are holding the exit, which you'll see later on. If you don't want to walk around the grass, you can just walk around the cobblestone, and you can enter this building, and you can walk around and look at the American cars. I think I have a Mercedes-Benz patent wagon there. So there's a little European car display here. After you're, bored of looking at the top building, you would start to go into the mountain. So there's a ramp that wraps around. It comes down here, right? So it's going down one floor. And then you would enter the museum here. Right? So I don't have many cars at this point in time. As a student, these things are quite expensive, these models. Well, at least definitely for a student, but I had to have some. There again is the laser cut wooden floor. And so the central spire is using some sweeps to support the roof, which ultimately goes through the ground up to the top and holds the roof of the top building. So it's one central like axle, and these are like spokes and wire wheels and stuff. This would be a view from one of the upper floors, seeing some of the other floors themselves. The floors themselves would have really windy, edges as if they were roads, winding roads. That was the inspiration for that. I wired in a whole lot of fiber optics, LEDs were, I think, pretty expensive back then, so I bought like one LED, and then I ran like, I don't know, maybe 50 feet of fiber optics off that one LED, and those all fed into each of these little plastic pieces. So there's only one LED actually illuminating all the lights inside of this building. It's just all hidden underneath that mountain. Okay, so there's a different view, and you'll see, very much like the Guggenheim Museum, you walk down these slowly, gradually descending ramps, at least on this circular face of the mountain, and so that's the Guggenheim inspiration. Built inside, the mountain, there would actually be some restaurants, cafes, gift shops, and stuff like that. Different views there. So the spiral part would be the back side of the mountain. On the opposite side of this white wall is all that grass that you saw, the exterior of the mountain. The floors holding the actual cars, though, would have to be flat. You can't have cars rolling around, not cars in a museum. So yeah, you can see the flatness of the mountains. You also see there's a structure I laser cut. This is a laser cut acrylic, and then there's a top layer on top of that. So it's a composite floor I made here. All right, this is an elevator shaft to bring all the cars to the various floors. Those fiber optics actually ran into those little rooms inside of the spiral section. I apologize for the fogginess of these photos. You gotta remember, this is 2006. I think my camera only had 2 megapixels back then, and I'm not a professional photographer, so that's that. Sorry. All right, so here's a view from after you've gone down all the different floors. Each floor would maybe have different countries, vehicles. The base floor here is German vehicles. And to give you one last shot to look at that giant central column that spans 1, 2, 3, 4 floors. Okay. Yeah. And then here's another shot of all those LEDs. Well, not LEDs, fiber optics, just running into plastic pieces. All right, so then you would take a ramp and then go into this last tunnel, and then you'd head out to the parking lot again. So here's a side view. Again, you'd park your car, you'd ride this escalator all the way up, you'd walk around the top building, and then you'd go down the ramp, and then you'd start spiraling your way down each of these floors, and then ultimately you'd come down this ramp, and this is where some of the large vehicles would be. All right. I think I don't know if I put a wind tunnel in. Maybe that's supposed to be a wind tunnel. All right. So this is the exit now. And so again, it uses a lot of the sweeps that are used to draw cars. And then it has these cables, just like the entrance, that was anchored at the top of the mountain. And that's what's kind of holding up the ends of these. It's kind of more for aesthetics. All right. And there's more of a ground, humanized view of it. And there's a front view. If this was a real museum, it would actually be wider, but I couldn't, it was already big enough. I had to actually fit this through a doorway. So that's why it's a certain width. If I could fit it through if doors were bigger, I would have made this model bigger, but yeah, I have my limitations, right? So here's the top view of that, exit again with the anchor at the top of the mountain and, the exit. Okay, so some of the facilities and departments I thought about, there's that elevator. This would be like a receiving department, bringing in all the food or, maintenance items. And then these little rooms, it'd be accounting, human resources, and all the departments businesses need. Also in the basement, this would be the service garage where repairs and restorations occur. So here's a side view of the back of the model. So there's the elevator, and then here's that service garage, and there's the exit, the ramp that the public gets to see. The public could wind down and walk out this way. Okay. Here's the other side. Yeah, that's the receiving department there. Okay, I think now, well, no, I photoshopped some very poorly photoshopped some overlays onto Google Maps. So it's the intention is to make it believable. It's not with no intention of it ever happening. All right, so now, over time, I bought some more models, so I just thought I'd show some of these off. Yeah, I gotta say, if you want to make miniature worlds, HO scale is where it's at. There's a very vast selection of HO scale models. All right, so there's like a Maserati Quattroporte, maybe some US cars here, a Mercedes, a Porsche 911, VW, even motorcycles, all the people, right? Yeah, an Audi A8, an E-Class, Maserati, I think that's an A-Class, a Maybach, a whole bunch of classic Ferraris, some Beamers, I think. No, these must be British cars here. Then race cars, right? Closer view, yeah, Mustang, 2002, a 500. Then down here, some German cars. Yeah, if opening features are your thing, even some 187 scales have opening features with actually better engines than some larger ones. You'll see here the spire of the top of building. I had it removable, so you could remove the roof, or I don't know, just maybe it was for transportation. I made it a separate piece. Oh, here's a racing truck. It's really hard. I don't collect semi trucks in 164 because of the size constraints, but in 187 you can pull it off. McLarens. I did keep this one, I think. It's a shame I sold that one off. But you got these Lambos. I think some rally cars, right? The Delta DTM car, Le Mans car. Here's some classic cars. Yeah, the 917Ks. I think these were made by Burkina. I remember that brand. So I sold all of those off. It's too bad, but now they learned Sparky's going to make it 164, or has. I guess I'll have to upsize. Yeah, Formula One cars even in 187 scale. So yeah, you can get transporters, and the size isn't really a big issue with this scale. Even a 333 SP, smart cars. Yeah, here's a classic transporter there. Oh yeah, the speed racers from the 50s. All right. So that is it. I hope you guys appreciated this. Yeah, sometimes you gotta move on. I obviously wish I didn't have to get rid of this, but I moved, and I can't be carrying around a 5 foot long box. Yeah, so at least it went to the store where I bought most of these models, kind of giving. Hopefully, they did something nice with it. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll try to dig up some other photos of automotive or motorsports related things. Hopefully, they aren't all overwritten on my hard drive. I was really shocked to learn about my Pikes Peak photos being overwritten and vanished. All right. Thanks for watching. I'll see you the next time I do a photo review or photo flipbook. Thanks. Bye.